Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Ducksoup webinar, where Giles, the head of professional services, will show you how to boost your LinkedIn leads with advanced targeting techniques. We also have live chat where you can ask questions related to this webinar's topic, and I will do my best to answer them. And at the end of the webinar, we will have a live Q&A with Giles. Thank you for joining us today, and let's start our webinar.
Thank you, Jin, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining today's Ducksoup webinar. For those who don't know me, my name is Giles Garnett. I am Head of Professional Services here at Ducksoup, and I present the webinar program as well as providing support to users through the medium of the the booster and technical calls. So we'll be showing how to book those later in the piece if you're interested in those. So today we're going to address a couple of related topics to help you on your way with your LinkedIn lead generation activities. We're going to look at how to make the most of LinkedIn searching and filtering options and how that can help you to target the correct people. We'll also review what we call lists in LinkedIn. Those are pages or lists of people within LinkedIn that Ducksoup can work with. Remember that Ducksoup only runs against what you have defined on the screen. As a part of the mimicking human behavior aspect of the tool. Do please try to keep any questions you have today on topic, and Jin, as she said, will do her best to answer as many of those as she can, and if there are other further questions, I'll look at those at the end in the Q&A. Anybody joining late? Yes, the webinar is being recorded, so you will get a link to it later, and it'll also be posted on both our YouTube channel and on our website in due course. So during this webinar, we'll cover some of the searching and filtering aspects of LinkedIn, hopefully giving you some useful tips, and I'll demo how that looks in real life. And then I'll talk about the different lists that you can use Ducksoup with and also demo those. Now, I understand we have a lot of people registered for today's webinar, so for any of you that are new to Ducksoup, this is what it can do for you. With Ducksoup, it's easy to find, attract, and engage with your prospects in LinkedIn. And with Ducksoup, you can automatically view prospects' profiles, endorse their skills or follow their activity, and send personalized messages or indeed connection requests on your behalf. With Ducksoup Turbo, you can also set up automated drip campaigns to your prospects that stop when a prospect responds. And with Ducksoup Turbo, you can also integrate directly with HubSpot and Pipedrive, and then using the webhook functionality, countless other systems. So that's Ducksoup. It's a Chrome extension that works in conjunction with the LinkedIn platform. So, firstly, why are we talking about these sorts of things? Now, remember what an extraordinary resource LinkedIn is. There are somewhere in the region of 700 million monthly users on LinkedIn, with somewhere in the region of 60 million users identified as senior level influencers. And over 30 million businesses are present on LinkedIn. So as the platform, the user base continues to grow. Now, we also really need to take into consideration the new LinkedIn restrictions placed on users regarding how many invites you can send per week or per month. So it's now more important than ever to make sure you have optimized your targeting. And to make full use of the LinkedIn search capabilities, we'll look at the search criteria and filter within standard LinkedIn. We'll touch on Sales Navigator and some of the options there. And then we'll also look at the Boolean search terms. And then later on, we'll give the list of lists even that you can use Ducksoup against. One of the most powerful things about the LinkedIn platform is its search capabilities, which once you've got to grip with, can massively enhance your ability to focus your outreach and lead generations. Now, one of the most important things to remember as well when you're carrying out searches in LinkedIn is the number of results that LinkedIn will actually show you. So in standard LinkedIn, if you carry out a standard search in LinkedIn, it will only show you the first 1,000 results. If you're using premium LinkedIn, such as Sales Navigator, you'll get the first 2,500 results. So those are really important numbers to take into consideration when you're narrowing down your target lists and trying to pinpoint the right people. So I'd now like to just touch on Boolean searches. Now, this is a topic that comes up a lot in booster calls with users, how to use Boolean search terms, how they can impact your search results, and how that can optimize your activities. Now, if you're trying to really narrow down your searches, you can use these terms, the and, the not, and the or, to produce more relevant search results. So if you put in the or, that will typically broaden your results. If you put an and, that will typically limit or narrow down your results. And a not will exclude, of course. And then you can use the parenthesis or the brackets in combination with Boolean search terms to further refine your filters. We'll come on to some examples in a second, but this is incredibly powerful and can be used in both standard LinkedIn and Sales Navigator to really help optimize those search results. So here are some examples. So you've got CEO or director or owner, and then you could also potentially exclude manager. And what LinkedIn does, it looks at the titles and the descriptions of people within the database, and then uses these terms in order to help you narrow down your search criteria. There's a bunch of different examples here, and I think the best thing to do is probably just to demo this. So if I start by opening my LinkedIn profile, because as I say every time, if anybody's new on here and you would like to connect with myself, very happy to connect with people. This is me on LinkedIn. Very happy if people want to send me a connection request. Put a message in there that it's via Ducksoup, or that you've found me via using Ducksoup. I'm quite happy to answer questions where I can, and yeah, feel free to send me a connection request. So if I now carry out a very simple search, for example, if I type in just here, web developer, and let's just narrow down my search. I'm now in standard LinkedIn, and if I look at a people search here, we'll just let this load a second. Okay. LinkedIn having a few gremlins today. There we are, people search. If I narrow down my search a little bit to be a little more local to myself, if I just do a simple search for web developer, I come up with 65,000 results. Now, as I said earlier, the limits within LinkedIn means that standard LinkedIn, if I do this, only shows me 100 pages. I've got 10 results per page, so I'm only seeing the first 1,000 of this 65,000. So I'm not seeing 64,000 results here. Now, I may want to say, well, I want a web developer, but I don't want to have a web designer. So I could here say, for example, if I wanted to use the Boolean search terms, I could put in bracket web developer and then put not designer. Let's try that. And let's see that narrows it down to 52,000. Now, if I wanted a designer or a developer, I could put in here or, and that should broaden my results. So now we're up to 84,000. So you can see there very quickly how the numbers change depending on what you put in. Now, there are all sorts of other combinations you could use here, but you can also do this within Sales Navigator. Now, you're also hopefully all familiar with the other filters that are available to you here within standard LinkedIn. So you can, for example, say, well, I am only interested in people who are maybe a second-degree connection. So then we can narrow the number down further. Here we go, we now have 6,500. And if I can continue to narrow this down, then maybe I would only want to look at people who have maybe a Dutch language profile, and they work within maybe within certain service categories here. But these are the standard search filters that you have within regular LinkedIn. So here I've put in, I'm only interested in people with the Dutch language. I've put in some service categories, and now I'm down to a search result of 78, which is great because I know I can see all of the results here. It's under that 1,000, so I know that I can use that. And we know that Ducksoup is happy with this list because you'll notice every now and then the Ducksoup icon turns green and says at your service. So that means that Ducksoup has recognized what is on screen as a result that it can run against. It can run its standard activities, be that visit and connect, or indeed if you wanted to scan the list. If I now go to Sales Navigator, actually, I'll tell you what, we'll go to a different search in Sales Navigator, that might be better. So here I did a very similar search earlier, but this time I hadn't put any of the other filters in. So this time let's narrow this down. Let's have a look at a UK result now. So we're looking for designer or web designer or developer here. That's giving me 43,000 results. And I can also again once again use the narrowing it down by relationship. Remember, first degree connections are those people you're already connected to. And you can also, look at third degree plus. Of course, if you've got somebody in common, a connection in common with people, you will find that you're more likely to get an acceptance from those people because your name is more familiar. They will see your name coming up on the platform. Now, what I've done here is I've got web designer or developer. I'm looking in the UK and I'm only looking at second degree connections. And what we can see here, we've got around 2,000 results. And if I scroll down to the bottom of this page here, we'll go all the way down to the bottom, we get 25 results per page and 100 pages. So we get 2,500 results. Now, one of the very useful things within Sales Navigator is that we have a bunch more filters. So if I just get rid of a couple of these things a second, there we go. And we now click on the All Filters button here. We get a whole load of additional filters that we can use. And this is very useful because you can actually narrow your targets down even more. You can select the industry. Not only can you select industry or select certain filters here, you can also exclude certain filters. So for example, under seniority level, if you wanted to exclude, for example, entry level people in this result, you can click on there and you can exclude it specifically. And that way you can narrow your search down. So maybe you want only looking at owners, partners, and directors, but then you're not interested in anybody who's unpaid. So we'll exclude them, and we'll exclude anybody who's in training. So that way you can actually specifically exclude criteria. And that's a really powerful way to make sure that your target list is as accurate as possible. You don't want to be wasting your views and indeed your very precious and scant resource that is your invites on people who are not fitting the criteria correctly. You can do this also with several of the other fields here as well. So have a play around with those. You can also exclude certain industries. There are certain ones that you can't exclude, but yeah, it's worth having a play around with. And you can also add specific job titles if that's how you're trying to narrow down your target market. Now, one of the additional things, let's go back and let's clear that a second. One of the additional things that you have within Sales Navigator, which is very useful and powerful when it comes to carrying out searches and creating lists, is that you can also just search by group. Now, if you only have standard LinkedIn, you have to be a member of a group to see the population of that group. Within Sales Navigator, you don't need to be a member of a group in order to see the population. So if I type in the name of a group here that I'm not a member of, I don't know, let's go for some sort of financial services regulation. I'm not a member of that group, but I can see, because I have Sales Navigator, that I have 190,000 people in that group here, and I can actually see that population here. I could now narrow this down with keywords or indeed via geography. Maybe I want to look at New York. And then you can actually see who's a member of this group. And this is a really powerful feature of Sales Navigator. In standard LinkedIn, in regular LinkedIn, in order to see the population of a group, you have to be a member of that group. Let me just demonstrate that here. If I go to my home here, and if I go to my groups over here, if I look at the technology and innovation group here, I can see who's a member here. That's the only way I can see it. If I've got Sales Navigator, I don't need to be a member of that group to see the population and indeed be able to carry out a search within there. So that's a very, very useful feature of Sales Navigator. Something that a lot of people go to me, oh, I didn't know that. So that's hopefully a useful tip for you. So you don't, make sure that that's something you pay attention to. Okay, so that's some of the tips and tricks around the Boolean searches and how to maximize the use of the search criteria, both within standard LinkedIn, both within regular LinkedIn here, and within Sales Navigator. Now, what I'd like to come on to next is, let me try and find the correct screen. There we go. There. Now I'd like to talk about lists that are recognized by Ducksoup. So the key thing with the lists is basically finding data on the screen that Ducksoup recognizes that it can process. And you can recognize that because when it comes to finding the list, you just have one easy indicator to look out for, and that is that the Ducksoup icon in the top right-hand corner turns green. Now here is a list of lists that Ducksoup can recognize, and we'll go through each of these so that I can demonstrate all of them. And remember, the webinar is being recorded, so you can always play it back and catch up that way. So all of these things, yeah, the search alerts, the LinkedIn groups, the alumni lists, people who viewed your profile, likes and reactions to articles, shared connections, other people's lists of connections, page followers. If you have a company page, you can now get Ducksoup to run against your list of followers. And indeed, you can create custom CSV files as well, and we'll hopefully have time to touch on that later. As long as the duck is green, you can run your automated actions. One little asterisk that I'm going to put by this is be aware of infinite loading pages. These are slightly more difficult to automate actions against because of the nature of the way the pages load. So be aware of that, and I'll explain what I mean by an infinite loading page as we come onto it in a minute. So once again, let's come out of here and let's show you what I mean by some of the lists. So let's start with LinkedIn groups. So I just touched on one just now within Sales Navigator. If you have, let's have a go. Look, we have a group here. So you can see a list of who's in a group within Sales Navigator. Now here, if I'm within this one here and I look at this particular group in a second, the icon in the top right-hand corner will turn green and will say at your service any second now. It's trouble with doing these things live, they don't always happen immediately. There we go, Ducksoup says at your service. Now this, because it's in standard LinkedIn, is an infinite loading list. So you'll see here on the right hand side, as I scroll down, more lines are loaded. So my advice would be scroll as far down as possible, then go back up to the top and then scan the list, download that data and then use that externally. The best thing to do is scroll as far down as possible to start with and then go back up to the top with whatever activity you want. But this is an example of an infinite loading page. It's slightly more tricky than a standard search result for Ducksoup to work against because of the nature of the way that the page loads. So this is an environment where you can run Ducksoup. So once again, I'll just show you, you can then visit the profiles, you can visit and connect, or indeed you could scan this list of profiles and then do something with that data at a later time. So that's LinkedIn groups. If we now look at alumni, let's go back to the home page here and we go for a university or a college of, let's look at the University of Cambridge. What you'll notice here with pretty much any school or college or university, they have an alumni page. If I click on the alumni button, we then get a whole load of data come up. We get a list of people appear down here, and in a second there we are, Ducksoup recognizes that as the list. And we can then also use all of the filters that are available within that environment to narrow that down. So maybe you'd like to narrow it down to people located in a certain place, so maybe people who are based in the US, the year that they studied, where they work. There are other filters here that you can use, what they studied, what they do now, what they're skilled at, and whether you're first, second or third degree connection. And you'll notice, so if we say, I don't know, let's go for business development, and let's look for people who started, I don't know, let's go something 1990. There we go. So now we have 3,597 alumni that we can now run Ducksoup against. There's enough data on this page here in order to run Ducksoup against. So again, you can now visit these people, visit and connect, or indeed scan this list in order to get information about those people from out of the system. So that's an alumni list. Now, profile views, that's a very useful one as well. you can always run Ducksoup against who has been viewing your profile. So if we go to who viewed your profile here in the top left, we scroll down here, you can see here the number of people who've been viewing your profile. And in a second, again, we'll notice Ducksoup turns green. We can run Ducksoup against this list here. So a lot of people will actively monitor who's looking at their profile, who's been visiting them and why. Natural curiosity of us human beings. People will go and gather information about those people as well. So that's a very, very useful one as well. Now, if I swap back over to my other profile, the other profile that we've got, lead lists. So within Sales Navigator, if you have been creating a lead list, let's see if I've got any here. There we go. I've got one here from previously. Wait for that to load. And in a second, the Ducksoup icon will turn green and say, yep, I can run against this list here. Any second now. Might be because I've got the 2 there. Wait for that to load. But against a lead list like here, we also have enough information for Ducksoup to run. Any second now. Maybe I need to reload it. Doesn't always pick it up first time, but essentially you can run Ducksoup against the lead list as well. So yes, we just need to wait for that one to load and pick that one up. But a search result, of course, is always the one. And then yeah, your lead lists as well. It might be because I've not activated my license on this particular one, so that could be why that's not turned green there. Likes and reactions. This is a really useful one. So let's just go back to regular LinkedIn, and we'll find an article that has got some reactions. So here we are. We've got this particular one here. There's 195 people have liked this particular post. I can open this one here and I can run it against 195 people, or indeed maybe just the 17 who've loved this particular article. I can now run Ducksoup against this list of people here. That's a really, really powerful one, because you can then build your messaging or your connection request against that particular article. Hey, I noticed that you liked the article regarding XYZ subject. That can be a very, very powerful way in order to get people to connect with you. You're immediately showing some sort of a connection with them insofar as you are looking at the same content. So that's something to think as well. There is the likes and reactions. Another good one is shared connections. If I just go to my my first degree network, just click on my network there, and I go to my list of connections. So this here is also a page that you can run Ducksoup from. This is your list of first degree connections, of course. Be aware, it's also an infinite loading list. But if I just grab any random profile here, I can see that this particular individual here has got 500 connections. I can click on there and I can see the list of mutual connections. So you can do that against any of your connections. Now, it depends on the individual's security settings as to how much information you see. Some people block this information, but this can be a really useful way of finding out. For example, if you've got competitors, you can look at their connections. So be aware of that. That's a very useful one as well, to sort of interrogate who other people are connected to. And as I said earlier, you've got the at your service green light from Ducksoup there. So that's a very useful one as well. Now, a relatively recent addition to our list of lists is company page followers. So if I just go to the Ducksoup page here, I'll just wait for this one to load. There we go. And if I look at my analytics here and I look at the followers here, see who's following Ducksoup, and I scroll down here and I click on the see all followers, I can now run Ducksoup against this particular list here. So that's a really, really useful one. You can immediately then run your Ducksoup activity against your list of followers from your page or your business or your company page. So that's a very, very powerful one, and that's a very recent addition. That's only come around in the last couple of months. So that's one that a lot of people are not aware of. Now, finally, I'd like to just mention the custom lists. Now, for any regular listeners to the webinar series, you'll be aware of what I mean by a custom list. So when you're creating your list of information, you have the option of being able to run Ducksoup. Let me just go back to, yeah, let's do it from here. So if we take this example here, so they say there's 143 people on this particular list here. You could then run Ducksoup and you can say, right, rather than going out and visiting and connecting to all of these people straight away, you could scan these profiles and you can gather one line per individual, the data relating to those people, or some limited data regarding those things, those profiles. And that would create one line per user in a CSV file. Once you've scanned your list, you can then download your data here. And if I just go to my scan data here, this is from some scans I've done previously, that creates me my CSV file here, and that happens to have, let's just open that up, that has 210 lines on it, because that's how many lines of data I've just downloaded. There we go. And now this is a list from previously, but I'd like to just illustrate this. Now I can now edit this list. I can play around with this list. I can remove information, add information, consolidate lists. But as long as I have got this column here, which has got the URL of the individual, first name and last name, those are the minimum requirements for the file to have. Now you can see here that by default you get more data than that, and you can see exactly when you scan the data, and indeed some other bits and pieces about the people. But as long as you've got the URL, the first name and the last name columns, what you can do then is you can then basically build your own custom list to run Ducksoup against. So if I now go up to my Ducksoup icon here, and I go to my revisit data button here, and now I upload my custom list that I've created. There we go. I can now run Ducksoup against this list of data here, and in a second the icon will turn green. Any second now, there we go. So I've now basically created my own CSV file of data, and I can now get Ducksoup to run against this 210 lines. Now using the scan and revisit activity is really powerful, because it helps you to create your own lists and limit exactly how much data Ducksoup is going to process, for example, per day. And also the order in which it's done. Now, any search result that appears in LinkedIn is beholden to the LinkedIn algorithms, and the data will appear in a certain way based upon the LinkedIn criteria that they set, usually related to your social selling index within the LinkedIn platform. Of course, if you create your own custom list, you can prioritize who you want to prioritize and decide exactly how many people you want to run the robot against. So this is a very, very useful way to do it. We have more information available on our support pages about how to scan and how to upload more information, and indeed on our blog pages. If you just go to our homepage, let me just bring that up a second. You go to our homepage here, and under our resources and under our blogs, you will find lots of content here, including, there we are, Ducksoup Revisit Data Tool. So that's how you can then use the revisit functionality there to build your own custom lists, which is very powerful, especially in light of the limitations that LinkedIn are placing upon our activity. I will mention one final one, and that is if you were using Ducksoup tags, for anybody who's familiar with the product already, if you've been tagging profiles already, you can run Ducksoup against your list of tagged profiles. If you carry out a list of, if you put your list of tags here, now I don't believe that this is going to work because I've just logged on as a different profile, but if you have, let's just see, I don't think I'll have any here. There we are. I've got some people here who I've tagged with this one. So here we can see I've people with that tag there, and you can see here that I can now run Ducksoup against that. So that's another list that Ducksoup will run against, is your list of people who you have previously tagged using the Ducksoup tool. So those are all the sorts of different lists that you can use. There are as you can see, many alternatives, and they should all help to contribute towards you being able to narrow down your targets and get Ducksoup to process against the data that you want it to process, rather than and having as much control as possible. So let's go back to the slides. So we've looked at the various different lists there. We've also looked through some of these search options, some of the search criteria. Be aware, have a play around, try and work out exactly what your keywords are. I've spoken to people in the past who use a multitude of Boolean search options in order to narrow things down, but then also make use of your skipping options within Ducksoup as well, so you're not wasting your profile views on people that maybe you've visited in the past or other bits and pieces. Take all of that into consideration so that you're making the most of the activity that you're allowed to do on the platform. In 2 weeks' time, the next webinar is going to be an introductory session into Ducksoup Pro. We're going to review this one. It's 6 or 8 months since we last did that, so we're going to be going over the basic functionality of Ducksoup Pro and how to maximize that against your activities. So that's coming up in 2 weeks' time. I mentioned this at the start, the booster sessions and the technical sessions. Booster sessions of people who are trying to get up and running with Ducksoup, trying to get their feet under the table, understanding what the robot does on your behalf and how it works. Do an explanatory session to sort of help you on your way and familiarize yourself with the tool and how it can work in conjunction with LinkedIn, how you can maximize the possibilities. Technical sessions are based upon really people who are more advanced users who are looking to maybe integrate with specific software or wanting to set up within maybe a VPS environment or other complexity, other complex solutions, maybe running multiple accounts in parallel, those sorts of things, building campaigns and those sort of aspects as well. You can, of course, determine your own agenda. So when you book these sessions, you have the option to put in your questions, and it's up to you as the user to define that. And all of the sessions, if you require, can be recorded so that you can play them over again and review the content. We will share the recordings with you, of course. Our links, which I think are fairly well known, our homepage and our blogs and webinars, it's all accessible via ducksoup.com. We have our YouTube channel, which is available as well. Our support pages, our suggestions pages, which is quite active. We have lots of suggestions from users. We often ask for more detail when we get a suggestion, but where possible, we try and give feedback where possible and upvote suggestions if you have suggestions or you see something on there that you think, oh, that would be useful. And then, of course, our very active Facebook page, which we, of course, monitor as well. Jin, do we have any questions?
Hi, Giles. Yes, I have a couple. So the first question would be, which I got quite a lot, can I use robot to comment on people's posts?
No, you can't. Basically, the activity of the robot is limited to what you find on a profile page. So on a profile page, there are certain options, and that would be message or connect or follow or save as lead, those sorts of things. Ducksoup is not designed in order to auto comment on people's posts. So no, unfortunately not.
Thank you. Another question would be, what would you recommend if I want to save my previous search, but on regular LinkedIn, not on Sales Navigator?
Oh, that's a good one. Use the standard bookmarks. If I just come out of here and I go to, so let's just do a very quick search. Let's look, I don't know, JavaScript developer, there we go. That one will do. We'll look for people. And we'll just say, I don't know, let's look for people in the Netherlands. So there we are. Say you have a search result here that you want to save. And of course, you know, if you've only got standard LinkedIn, what's the best way to save it? The best way to save it is just to create a regular bookmark and then label it so that you know what that bookmark is. That would be the easiest way to do it. Yeah, just save it as a bookmark. You can then come back round to it. Within Sales Navigator, you have a way of saving searches, of course, and you get notifications through, and you can use the hyperlinks from those search results in order to run Ducksoup. But the best way in standard LinkedIn, in regular LinkedIn, use your standard Chrome bookmarks, save them in the appropriate folder where you need them to be saved, and label them according to your terminology here, so you know exactly what your criteria is. But that would be the simplest way, because then you can save as many search results as you want. And then if you use the history skipper in Ducksoup, then you can make sure you're not revisiting the same people again and again and again. So that can be a really useful thing as well. So I would always recommend using the regular Chrome bookmarks in order to do that.
Thank you. Another question would be, can I run follow-ups from Revisit Data tool?
Can I run follow-ups from Revisit Data tool? Can you run follow-ups? I think you mean enrolling them into a campaign, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
No, you can't. Basically, the enrollment functionality of Ducksoup Turbo only works against a regular search result in standard LinkedIn, such as this, or a regular search result in Sales Navigator. Because of the data that's available on the screen, those are the only two places that you can run the enrollment, as in this enrollment here. If you wanted to, let me think. If you wanted to from here, yeah, you can visit and connect to these people, of course, and that would start the campaign, but you can't enroll them into a campaign without doing the visit and connect. Yeah, so that's the difference is there. Within the widget, you can use the widget. There we go. That's the right word I was looking for. You use the widget against regular LinkedIn search results and and Sales Navigator search results. Other than that, you have to do visit and connect in order to enroll people into a campaign. I think that's the question that they wanted answered.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Another question would be, is this unlimited? If not, what are the limits to the number of visits per day?
Depends very much upon what type of LinkedIn account you have, whether you have a free account, whether you have a paid account of some sort. And if you look at the Ducksoup options, so if I just open the Ducksoup options here and you look under the throttling section here, you can see here roughly some guides here as to the number of visits you can carry out per day, depending on the type, the number of visits and activity you can carry out safely, depending on what type of LinkedIn account you have. So you've got the profile visits, you've then got the ability to limit number of connection requests, and also your direct messages. Direct messages is a first degree message, or message to first degree connections, I should say. So it depends on what type of accounts, what type of paid account or free account you have in LinkedIn as to how much activity you can carry out. Now, irrespective of what type of account you have, we are seeing, as I mentioned, as I touched upon earlier, there is the weekly limits of connections that you can send, connection requests that you can send out, that we've been seeing pretty widely applied over the last few months, since I think around towards the end of Q1 this year, where people are being restricted to around 100 connection requests per week. What we're seeing a lot of people do then is, rather than just always sending out connection requests, we're seeing people going out and visiting lots of profiles, gathering data, getting information about people, and then creating specific targeted lists so that they're inviting them, then sort of maybe 100 people over 1 or 2 days per week. So they use all their connection requests in 1 or 2 days, specifically targeting their high potential value targets, and then the rest of the time visiting lots of profiles in order to gather data or to try and narrow down their targets. So there we have a good article around that, again under our blog page here. If you have a look through here, there is an article around The new LinkedIn limits, so have a look on there. We do update our blogs on a regular basis, so any new information we get, we do feed that into there. But yeah, the LinkedIn limitations of connection requests is the most important one, and you'll get a pop-up saying basically you're out of LinkedIn connection requests until next week. So it's fairly obvious when that pop-up does appear.
Thank you. I have another question about how to exclude specific contacts, for example, previously communicated with or from certain campaigns.
Yep, okay, so let's just flick over to this one, because under Sales Navigator, you have a good option here. When you're carrying out a search within Sales Navigator, we've got one here, you have the ability here under your past lead and account activity, so you can remove people if you've saved them, if you've viewed them, if you've contacted them before. You can remove people natively within Sales Navigator from your previously targeted individuals, and that can be a very useful thing if you're, for example, in this case, you've got 10,000 results and you've worked through the first couple of thousand. You say, right, just remove anybody who I've previously viewed, and then you know you're then going to see hopefully the next few thousand, etc., etc. So that's quite a useful thing as well there. This is also useful on the spotlights. So this helps you to narrow down people who have been active within LinkedIn, people who've posted within the last so many days. That's something I should just touch upon, because this data here in spotlights used to appear along the top. It now appears in a little drop-down menu here. Now, the other question that you mentioned there about excluding specific people from your activities, under your options here, you have this skipping rules here. So if you've previously visited and tagged profiles, you can use, if you've been using Ducksoup tags, you can enable this one here and type in the tags that you want to exclude, or if indeed leave blank to skip anybody who's got any tag. You can also use the history skipper here to stop you visiting the same profiles again and again. And then if you want to use the regular expression function, now let's do this a second, because this is a good way to show you the support pages. And if I now type in here, I don't know if regex, no, it doesn't. If I go to skipping, how do I select my skipping options? There we are, skip a certain company or profile. Let's go down here. So this is a regular expression example here. If I now take this text here and copy this, put this into skip profiles that match pattern. There we go. So what would happen now is that if I wanted to, for example, skip anybody who had IBM or Microsoft in their profile, and when I say in their profile, I mean in the high-level data that appears in this text here, Ducksoup would do its absolute best to see, okay, right, let's skip those people because yeah, maybe you want to skip competitors or something like that. So using the regular expression pattern here, you can add further ones just by adding the vertical line as the separator, and then add whatever. It's very useful for being able to use against certain job titles. So I've seen people use it against, for example, the word trainee, those sorts of things. Maybe even CEO if you're wanting to exclude CEOs, names of competitors, etc., etc. And Ducksoup will do its best to find that text string within what you see on the screen, be that here within the text here, or if indeed if you're within Sales Navigator within this text here, it will see if it finds that information. If it finds IBM or Microsoft or whatever text it is that you have defined, it will then skip that profile and move on to the next one there. Okay.
Thank you. That's it from me.
Excellent. Let's just pop back to the slides. There we go. As always, thank you to everybody for attending today. Back in 2 weeks with the introduction to Pro. We'll be going over some of the basics of Pro again, just reviewing where we are for any new users. And as always, today's content has been recorded. It will be available on our website and via our YouTube channel as usual. And I'll hand you back over to Jin to say goodbye.
Thank you everyone for attending, and if you have any further questions, please go to our website, and there's a live chat option or email option, and email us or message us and we will be happy to answer them. So thank you so much for attending, and see you on the next webinar.